All right, welcome to Chapter 2. This is the first video in Chapter 2. In this installment, you're going to be able to answer the first 4 questions on the Chapter 2 guided reading. Within those, you are going to be those questions kind of entail describe the relationship between the settlers at Jamestown and the Pamunkeys. That was a Native American Indian tribe. Who is the only man who seemed to be able to bring order to Jamestown, and what happened to him? Your third question is, in your own words, what is the purpose of mercantilism? And then last, but certainly not least, what were some of the problems with Jamestown? We're going to talk about kind of their initial struggle, and then in the next video, we'll talk about how they kind of overcome this. So, all right, let's get into this. Jamestown was settled in 1607. We're going to talk about kind of what led to that, and then, like I said, some of the problems a little bit later. But as they settle in the Chesapeake region of Virginia, the first thing they do is they encounter the Pamunkey tribe. It's a Native American tribe led by a man named Powhatan, and the Pamunkeys see the English as just this strange group, barbaric. They don't really know what they're doing. Powhatan kind of sees them as just, again, not very worldly. They don't know how to farm. The men are doing the farming. In Native American culture, like, that's women's work, so he can't quite figure out what exactly they're doing. The other thing is, again, they don't know how to survive in this climate. So as the men are farming, they're not hunting. And in Native American culture, the women kind of do the farming, the men are out hunting, and they have a plethora of fish and meat. The newfound colonists had none of this. So they had some pretty lean times, and people couldn't figure out really why they were starving. They didn't see the English as very noble. A lot of people didn't really want to work. We're going to talk about that as one of the major problems at Jamestown. Wasn't a lot of workers. A lot of people wanted to be leaders, not followers. So that was a major issue. Powhatan saw them as very barbaric. In their conflicts, in Native American conflicts, whether that's with the white man or with other Native tribes, it was a conflict between men. So if your tribe kills my tribe, then the winning tribe is going to take the women and children within their tribe, and they're going to raise those children as their own. They're going to take and help out the women, so they're going to take those people on. Not the case with the English. They killed men, women, children. It didn't really matter. They're going to win. They were going to win and make sure they win for good. So Powhatan is kind of taken aback by that. The English also want him to kind of pledge allegiance to their king, King James the First, and the Native Americans, the Pamunkeys, really can't figure out exactly, like, why would a man bow down to another man, which literally they want him to do. They want him to kind of take a knee and bow down, and they really can't figure out why anybody would do this. They're taken aback by the bravado and the bragging of the English. And as they kind of sit there and watch them struggle, they're wondering, what do they have to brag about? They're not really making for a very successful settlement here, and why are they so egotistical? Now there is some connection. Powhatan really does feel like he can control them. The Pamunkeys are bigger in size. There are more of them than there are of the English. So he feels like they're not really surviving, and he feels like he can kind of utilize them for his gain. And there is another connection. Powhatan's favorite daughter, Pocahontas, marries an English settler named John Rolfe. So they do have some commonality there. Powhatan, like I mentioned, allows the English to survive. So he does kind of allow them to hang around. And the reason he does this is that connection between his daughter and John Rolfe. But also, more importantly, he feels like the English are going to benefit him in some way. Whether it's through labor, the English labor that he thinks that they can utilize eventually. And then they also really enjoy the English trade, particularly the access to guns. And they feel this is going to be very helpful in their confrontations with other Native American tribes. So Powhatan really kind of allows the English to hang around instead of taking them out at first sight. Probably going to regret that. John Smith is the one that heads up the settlement at Jamestown. He seems to be about the only one who can bring any order. He he has some kind of relationship with the Pamunkeys, and he kind of helps out a little bit, but that's going to be short lived. He is going to have to return to England. He's involved in an accident where when he was utilizing his gun, the gunpowder caused an explosion. It blew up by mistake in his face, and he has to return to England for medical treatment. So this is kind of a blow to the Jamestown community, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. Now they are going to stumble on to eventually, and we'll talk about this in the next video, some of the redemption of Jamestown, but they do stumble on to tobacco, growing tobacco, which is going to be a pretty profitable product for them in the future. Now, the reason for colonial expansion is this idea of mercantilism. Mercantilism is the thought of trading goods, and obviously your goal is to come up with a favorable balance of trade. You would like to have your exports exceed all the imports. And ideally, you would love to have there be no imports. So I'm selling and I really don't need to buy anything in order to produce what I'm producing. That's all profit, no output. That's kind of what they're looking for. And this is really the reason for colonial expansion, is those in power back in England or back in any of the countries that engage in expansion, they really like this idea of mercantilism, thinking the colonies are going to supply the mother country with additional markets, additional natural resources. They're going to produce things that maybe they can't get over in England or Spain or wherever it is the mother country is. So this really is the reason for colonial expansion, is this idea of mercantilism, supplying kind of what they don't have and helping with that balance of trade, because the colonies are a built-in market. Now this all starts with the Virginia Company. The Virginia Company is a joint stock company where investors are going to invest in the Virginia Company with the thought that they are going to supply things back to England, whether that's products or natural resources. They're really hoping, just like in Spain, they have a run of gold and silver mines that they can kind of ship the gold and silver back, or if not, they can find something else of value, whether that's timber or food or something, skins and of animals and fur, that sort of thing. Something that they can kind of ship back for some profit. So the Virginia Company is found kind of that way. Now, there are problems almost from the get-go. As this joint stock company funds the expedition of Jamestown, I think it was like 104 men and like 4 boys come to Jamestown. Eventually, they're going to have women come over later. And they do things pretty much wrong from the get-go. They are on an island peninsula, so they have very swampy land, which is difficult to grow certain things. Also, it's a breeding ground for disease and malaria, typhoid, yellow fever, you name it. It's good for spreading it. So where they settled is actually very problematic. Too many people wanted to be leaders. Nobody really wanted to do the hard work of establishing this society. Everybody wanted to kind of run the show. Nobody wanted to put their back into the labor to get things done. So this was a major problem. Maybe one of the reasons that we wanted to work is because nobody really knew what to do. There was a really lack of knowledge on how to grow crops within the settlement. So they really didn't know how to get a good yield, or what to grow for that matter, that would be successful in Virginia. So they have some issues. And there's too many skirmishes with Native Americans, truth be told. That doesn't kind of bode well. Now, they do have the advantage of guns. Now, they're going to trade guns with the Native Americans, but they do have more guns. So that's one thing that they do kind of allows them to survive. Now, all of this is going to be extremely problematic. There's going to be, in the 10 years after their arrival, there's going to be a few more additions, a few more arrivals. There's actually one kind of summer or one season where there's mass starvation. The 500 or so settlers that are there pretty much all die, except for like 50. Most of starvation, some of disease. There's stories of people digging up corpses for food. One man even butchered his wife, so that's not good. So it's a pretty rough way to go. in 1611, the Virginia Company imposes martial law, which is basically like a suspension of everybody's rights, and we're gonna tell you what to do. They try to organize into groups to do certain tasks, and this is kind of an effort to get people on the right page and try to get them back in to be successful. In the second video, we're going to look and see if this works. So a little suspense for you to kind of lead you into the next one. If you have any questions on these questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in video number 2.